Hello world, my name is Nate. This is the third episode from Improving Space issue number 1. This episode is from the middle here, and it is called 6 Documents. And this episode is about using 6 documents to organize the design and construction of a building, and basically helping us get our heads around how do we organize a complex subject and navigate it. Say you want to design your dream house. That house is for you, and you may have a lot of ideas about what should go in it, what you want it to look like, what feelings you want it to evoke when you walk inside of it. But ultimately, if you want that dream house has to be put on a piece of paper first. It's got to be put on some blueprints to get people to be able to build it. And in putting it on blueprints, it goes through the hands of an architect and engineers to design it. It goes through regulatory agencies who may be having a stake in landscaping, fences, uses, things like that. And it goes through a contractor who's going to be looking for budget, pricing it out, looking for ways to cut costs. All of these people messing with the project and fine-tuning it can leave a client, especially inexperienced clients, feeling like they're on the outside looking in and don't have control of this process, don't know where it's going to lead. On the contrary, what we want is for essentially the same people to be doing these things and to be working in the way that they are used to, but we want the client to be able to feel like they're in a position of control where they can see what's going on, they understand the process, and they have an inline to being able to change it if things go off the rails. Basically, I would encourage you to think of it like this. I'm not going to be able to show you the perfect way to run a project as a client. There is no such thing. It depends on the type of project. It depends on the type of client. What I would propose to you is that the point that you want to get to, that I can objectively identify, is you want to get to the point where how you would be if this was your 10th time doing a project like this. So if this was the 10th time you had designed a house, you would understand what is important to you and what you have the bandwidth to think about at different points in the design process. It would be all familiar to you, and that's really the best that we can get. And you see, if you see a developer wading into unfamiliar territory, that's really what they're bringing in. They're bringing in the knowledge of how this basically should go, and then adapting that knowledge as the situation merits. So that is what we want. To do that, I'm going to be talking about the documents that are used to design a construction process, a project. We typically, I used to be an architect. I've retired that license, so I'm no longer practicing. So everything that I'm talking about should be treated as though it was written by an educated layperson. Essentially, this is philosophical, trying to get on the same page, and so I'm seeking the validation from other people in the industry here. That creates a bit of a tightrope where I have to talk about what is industry standard while at the same time asking for validation from people who actually have the credentials still in the industry. Be that as it may, take everything that I'm saying with a bit of a grain of salt. Think of it like you're getting advised by a philosopher, not an architect. Be that as it were. The typical way that the industry describes the drawings are as construction documents, and construction documents encompasses both drawings and specifications. They also, contract documents is a broader umbrella term that also encompasses the contracts, which are often published by the AIA and people use the AIA published contracts. So all of those are commonly known as the construction documents or contract documents. I am going to encourage us to think a little more broadly. And actually, I'm going to propose that there are really 6 documents that are critical, that all must be coordinated with each other to get a complete picture of the project. And I've designed a way to remember those 6 documents on an ordinary human 5-fingered hand. So buckle up, here we go. We're going to start with first finger. We're going to start with the pointer finger. The pointer finger is for remembering the schedule, because we're talking about where people need to go and when. The schedule is going to be represented in diagrams and such with that icon of the clock. So that's going to mean the schedule. And remember, that's the first finger with a pointer. We're going to skip over the middle finger right now in case you're in kind of company, and I'm going to encourage you to make sure that you're not going to offend anybody watching this video later on. So we're going to skip over the middle finger, and we're going to go to the ring finger. The ring finger is representing the budget, because ring fingers are for rings, and diamond rings, for example, can be expensive. So the ring finger is for remembering the budget, which is the second key document, and that is going to be represented by the symbol of this $sign. Okay, the next finger going down the hand is the pinky, and the pinky is going to represent drawings, because it is representing that with the wave of a hand, an architect can annihilate a project budget and schedule. The drawings are supposed to show how both important they are and how easy it is to get out of hand when all you are is looking at the drawings and looking at what you want and not what is practical to get and to ask people for. So the pinky is the drawings. Okay, now I ask that you make sure that nobody's around. We are going to go to the next finger, the finger that we skipped, which is the middle finger, and that is for the specifications, because there is no misunderstanding I'm not going to do it. There's no misunderstanding a middle finger held aloft in the air. There's no need for clarification, and the specifications are black and white in that similar sort of way. Whoever holding up the specifications is holding up to the answer of what we should be doing. The specification, they taught us coming up through the ranks of architecture that the drawings show where things go, and the specifications describe what those things are. Flooring materials, concrete, pressure per square inch, things like that are found in the specifications. And next to them, the drawings are really, like I said, about where, and the specifications fill in all of the detail about what is going in. So that is the middle finger. Next, we go to agreements and contracts. Contracts, they will be represented by the palm. That's our sixth appendage that we are going to be using here. So agreements encompasses not only contracts that you have as a client with your architect, with your contractor, but also implicit agreements, such as the agreements that you, or explicitly agree to when you get a building permit. So agreements are also what you are responsible for doing if you're going to build in this town, if you're going to connect to the power grid. What are all of your obligations, or really what is encompassed under the idea of agreements that we want to be tracking in our project? Who has agreed to what, and are people fulfilling their obligations? The final digit, the final document that we need to remember is the all-important program. The program is made by the client, and the joke is that I was going to do, but I was who's got two thumbs, and I just completely can't do a joke. So anyway, programs are for clients. The client is the only one who can write the program, because they are the only one who understands what it is they want out of this building. For example, if you're buying a refrigerator, part of the program for that refrigerator might be that you need to be able to baste a Thanksgiving turkey in the vegetable drawer. Being able to, what you need to do with this piece of equipment, not how many amps it takes up or the dimensions of it, but what does this object need to do for your life? That is the kind of information that is found in the program. And without a program, all of the other professionals involved can't be sure that they are making decisions or advising the client in a direction that is in keeping with what the client actually wants, that this building is going to satisfy their goals and not just be a constructed complete building, but that it actually function for the client and justify them spending this money on it. So we're going to have other videos released in future issues that deal with each of these documents specifically. We're going to be talking about what goes into them, what can change them. Those are all going to be in specific documents. So real quick, so you know what to look for. The one about schedules, we'll talk about how you can make, how to design a schedule, how you make one on your own in an Excel spreadsheet or something like that, and the common calamities that befall schedules in the construction industry. There'll be a video about budgets where I'll be able to show you how a real construction budget is developed, again in a spreadsheet, but tracking the fine-grained numbers up to the overall cost of construction, interest rates and things like that. So how is all that managed in a budget, and how can you track it? Will be the subject of the budget issue. I'm going to have two videos actually on drawing. One will focus on working within an outside shell, so that'll be essentially like a space planning drawing, and what are you looking for in space planning as a client, and how do you evaluate what an architect has done? How do you provide your own starting point for what you're looking for? So that will be the drawing on interior planning and floor planning, basically. Then we'll have a video also on designing a building from the outside that fits into the context in the neighborhood. So the idea is that for many of my user groups, video watchers, I imagine, will be interested in renovations and rehabs, not necessarily building something new, but maintaining and fixing up something that already exists. That was my focus when I was an architect, so that's kind of near and dear to my heart. And the idea is that first drawing video would suffice for people who are looking to renovate within an existing footprint. And then if you were going to design new, you can couple that new video from designing from the outside with the designing from the inside and get an approach to designing that couples the two of them. Same way that you design a boat. I've heard that in designing boats that you can either design it from the inside out or the outside in. And it's the same principle. You want a push and pull between what needs to the interior environment and fitting that environment into the larger context of the neighborhood or the building site. I'll have a video on specifications and share what works for people in the industry that I've seen. I will have a video on contracts where I'm not a lawyer, so I'm going to be treading very lightly here, but I will be sharing the key insights that were given to me when I worked as a contractor on managing the handoff as really being the key. The fact that the plumber's got to install the pipes is fairly straightforward in a contract, but where their work stops and another one starts, and understanding how that trade-off is going to work. Are you going to have conflicts where one person, he needs to wait for another before they can keep going? That kind of thing is handled in agreements. And so we're going to talk really about the idea of agreements as being things that can pass through to other people, and how we could all be looking at the same agreement and agreeing to it together, as is the case with terms on a construction site. Everybody's got to use the bathroom, same bathroom. So the final video then in the 7 videos that relate to these 6 documents will be about programs, and I will really try and encourage you to look for ways to be able to describe what you're looking for, not just in the building, but out of your life, essentially, in the future, and how the building and the environment can shape that. So that'll be an episode on program, and we'll have all these episodes in the future. The rest of this episode is going to focus on the need to track between those 2 documents. So there are many books that show you how to make a spreadsheet, but really the key need here is to be able to understand how a change to the drawings implicates the spreadsheet. That is essentially what it is the client's job to manage, as they are. It's everybody's job to manage that, but that's very much what the client is concerned with, is managing all of this together. So the best way to make sure that you are adjusting the budget as you press down the lever on the house, on the drawing, is to actually look with your brain and mind. That is the most straightforward way to do it. I'm not going to be talking in this video about a neat hack to be able to get those things to correlate. I'm going to be talking about hacking your mind to be able to look at those things and keep track of it yourself, because after all, that is the receptacle that all this information is trying to wind up in. So the way that we're going to do that and help you look through this with your mind is with a simple trick. So I've given you the 6 fingers, or the 5-fingered 6 document approach. We've got these documents here, and I want you to think about laying them out on a piece of paper as shown. So you've got kind of these 2 on the top of schedule and budget, drawing specifications, agreements, and program. So if a piece of paper was going to have that information on it, we would lay out that piece of paper like this. So this right here, this paper layout, is what I'm proposing that we think about adopting this as a standard framework for discussing something. So, for example, if you were going to pave a driveway, you might present it like this. You have time-related information in the top left corner, such as the date that you'd hope to have it done by, or the date that the drawing was done. You have budget-related information in the top right corner, such as what your budget is to get this driveway paved. You then show the driveway, you can show the dimensions of it, give the relevant spatial information about it, and then have specifications that talk about what you want that driveway to be paved in. Finally, in the bottom left, you would have the companies who currently are or are being sought to do this work. That would form the information related to agreements, who has agreed to do this. And finally, the overall goals of the client in the bottom right corner, or what is this supposed to be doing for me? Do we want to be snow melt? We want to be slip resistant? Things like that that are important to the client and not necessarily intuitive to the people doing this design. Now, clients often think that once you've gotten that design in front of people, what more need is there for a program? If we're talking about a driveway, what do they need to know, or what do they care about why I'm going to be using it? The fact is that things change in design, and decisions that were made on Monday often get revisited on Wednesday, and being able to have that anchor of what is the point of all of this in that bottom right corner of your goals is again, I would argue, a critical piece of information that should be moving along with all of the decisions to further those goals. So if we're going to do a driveway, we need to keep remembering why we're doing it in the first place. If you had a format like that for, say, describing a driveway repair job, you could conceivably break down what goes into that even further using that same format. So you could talk about the labor hours of the people who are going to be installing it. You can talk about what their personal goals are and assets that they could be bringing to the job site. And it's a little bit hazy right now. How long that they are contracted to work with that company, how long they've been there. Materials, tiles and concrete, things like that can also would also be very much suited to this format. Furthermore, I've circled in that example of the tile sheet up there that there's missing information. There's a blank up in the top left where you would expect schedule and budget information. So simply having that organization there, the blank recalls to the viewer what is supposed to go there. Like, oh, well, they're not giving us any information about lead times, or the information about cost per square foot is kind of hazy. It just says it's the manufacturer's suggested price, not the actual price. So having a place to look for this information, what to expect there, and then when you see something that diverges from it, you have information and you have an understanding that you wouldn't have had if you were just looking at a printout of whatever information we have getting put onto a piece of paper in an additive way. This is essentially looking for gaps and showing those gaps better than a promotional piece of paper from a store. So the idea then that I'm going to be talking about throughout all of these issues and episodes on construction and design is empowering the client to be able to develop a holistic picture of what they want on their own. And the point is not to be able to manage to do this entire process and to take over the jobs of the architect and the contractors. The point is to be able to share the full vision as it appears to you in your head. As look for that vision, like challenge yourself as to what schedule could you live with, what is your maximum budget. Challenge yourself to flesh that out and get a complete picture. On the one hand, you might get contractors and professionals looking at you like that's unrealistic. You might have your bubble burst a little bit, but that is better to me than going forward with just one element, just say a design for a dream house, and finding people who are on board to just move forward in that direction, regardless of whether the big picture makes a lot of sense. So as a client, getting into this on your own, you may not have all the answers. You won't have perfect answers. You will be met with resistance, but being met with resistance by proposing what your optimal answer would be is, as I said, better than being met with no resistance because the people you're talking to don't care about the fact that this might be headed in a direction that the client would not wish if they had a full understanding of the scope. So that is what we're trying to do. We are trying to give our professionals a target to look at. We are not trying to do their job for them, but just show them what we are trying to accomplish. That way, when we get the results back, we can evaluate them and see if the results of that professional really were on target. So I'm presenting this idea. I know it's a little bit hazy, maybe not a ton to work with, but I'm presenting this idea essentially to the industry in design and construction and asking people to think about this approach to teaching clients how to get their heads around the project. I encourage people to use the 6-document mnemonics for remembering them, as well as that piece of paper. That piece of paper layout, it consists of 4 lines. All of the images in these drawings are Creative Commons. I'm releasing them into the Creative Commons. Furthermore, a piece of paper with 4 lines on it, I can't conceive of a world where that needs to be copyrighted, where somebody wouldn't be allowed to lay out information because somebody else had copyrighted it. So there's no notion that this belongs to anybody. This is 4 lines on a piece of paper describing spaces that certain information should go to. And if anybody wants to use that, I would be honored to see that used in a way that looked forward towards better collaboration between parties from different companies, from different organizations, things like that. So that is the end of this video. I hope that you will join me for the next video in issue 1, which is called A File Evolves. So that is where I'm going to be talking about these 6 documents, starting with that piece of paper and examining how you could actually make a computer, a piece of software that managed this information. And it is, I'm fairly excited about it. I hope that you check it out. The final video in issue number 1 is called New Ideas for Old Problems, and I also encourage you to check that out. It is a bit on a different extreme than this video was. This was very much about the nuts and bolts of construction documents, and New Ideas for Old Problems is about cooperative democracy and being able to collaborate and talk about what our goals for a society are. So a bit of a different topics, but I'm approaching them in the same way, and they do all dovetail together into basically an imagined world where we have some kind of ability to design and control our world as members of the general public. So that's kind of where all this is leading. So I hope that you enjoyed this. This has been a Dented Pencil production. As I said during the video, all of these images are released into the Creative Commons and anybody can use them. And I hope that you enjoyed this and stick around for more videos. Thank you very much.